So Liz, your time at dictionary.com, I loved reading through the bio, some exciting things that you achieved there. Tell us about some of what you did there.
Yeah, it was, being in the thick of it was definitely a roller coaster. So essentially I inherited a business that was 20 years old, had a stagnant trend line and a team that was really change averse. So I didn't come to dictionary.com to do status quo. I came because I saw big potential in the brand, and I saw a brand that had huge equity and was really well liked. So ultimately we changed everything about that status quo. We brought revenue capabilities in-house, we onshored engineering staff, we rewrote every single application that the site was built on, and really breathed some life into the brand through marketing and PR efforts. So the end result of that was double-digit revenue growth, and ultimately we were able to sell the company for 150% increase in valuation after 4 years.
Tell us about some of the mistakes you made.
Oh my God, there were so many mistakes, probably more mistakes than successes ultimately. But I think you could sum it up as I wholesale underestimated the role that people would play in all of that change, and the fact that we were enacting so much change would take such a toll on the people in the team. So I knew where I was going, I knew what the end vision was, and I just got in there and I marched headstrong towards that. And it was hard for the team to see, and they didn't have the full information that I had as to where we were going. And there was a lot of downstream consequences from that.
Right. What is your why? What motivated you when you were in your role? Has it changed at all?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it changed very much throughout that time at dictionary.com. So the corporate environment of our parent company and the company that I'd been part of before dictionary.com was incredibly numbers driven and profit driven, and I'd started my career as an analyst, so it was all about the numbers. And I think that while absolutely that remains important in my point of view, what I experienced along the way I could not have anticipated, and that was true joy and fulfillment in helping people be success, in coaching and mentoring and training and advocating for people in a way that they could accomplish things and realize a part of themselves that they didn't before. So, in kind of my journey, I've had this realization that not only do I get fulfillment in that there's an exponential impact I can have on the business by helping people grow and develop as individuals, and that seeing them achieve fulfillment and success is hugely rewarding.
So Liz, we had coffee last week or the other week, and during that we were talking about staff culture, and it reminded me of an event I was at recently, an Indigenous community event where I got to see a young 18-year-old boy become a man in the Torres Strait Islander tradition. And as we were talking about staff culture, you started using some words and terms that seem to be almost the opposite to what our culture is going in. When we talk about agility, we talk about digital transformation, we talk about innovation, all these really buzzwordy titles and topics. But I'd love to hear again your thoughts on how to build good staff culture, because you had some really interesting terms.
Sure. So I think, first of all, those words you mentioned, transformation, innovation, digital culture, those are, I would think of those as outcomes. And you can only impact your outcomes as a manager. You think about how do you drive your outcomes based on what inputs you're putting in. So if we speak about it in this is a bit clinical, but economic terms, our inputs in the digital technology space are people. And unlike any other industry or any other business, people are, or any other kind of input. So steel is steel. Wheat is wheat. People are highly, highly sensitive to their environment and the conditions under which they are, exist as part of a team. And so, it is the culture through which we can impact those individuals that then impact the outcomes. So when I studied sociology in college, that was a long time ago, we talked about culture in terms of the artifacts, the stories, the beliefs, the behaviors, the language of a group of people. So when I'm thinking about the culture of a company, or any team, I'm thinking about, well, what language is that team using? What stories does that group of people tell about themselves? What are their behaviors? Do they show up to meetings on time and tell a joke? Does everyone sit on their phone in a meeting? And maybe both are appropriate. I think if you were working as a finance trader, you probably want to be on your phone watching the stock price, but if you're, in something that's more highly regulated, you might want to be more regimented about your meetings. So, long story short, I would say two further things about that. The first one is there's no one right culture. You need to look at what industry are you in, what are the circumstances of your business, of your team, of the management personalities, and cultivate a culture that is right for that. So in a highly regulated environment, you'll want a certain culture. In a highly creative environment, you'll want a very different culture. The second thing I want to talk about a little bit is, well, okay, now once you know what kind of culture you might want, how do you get it? And the bad news is you can't just flick a switch or mandate that we're going to have this kind of culture. What you can do is influence it, and by influence it, I think leadership has to be incredibly intentional and thoughtful, and realize that every behavior, word, story, belief that they have is going to permeate through the business. And the other way, and I think really, really important way, and this is where you come in, is that you can influence it by the people that you bring into the organization. So if a person cannot subscribe to and endorse and support your culture, you're just going to have friction.
Yeah. Recently coming out of Silicon Valley, what are your takeaways that you would bring to the Brisbane market that you can share with our audience about what we can learn, what we can invest in now to help us in the global market?
Well, I've had some really amazing and insightful conversations with different leaders and participants in the local digital startup scene here. And universally, what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is that startups are able to get going, and there's such brilliant ideas here, but the kind of tripping point is around scaling. And not so much scaling the product or the technology, but scaling from a sense of go-to-market. I think that, and I would kind of step back and think about it in more of a meta sense, which is because the digital native technology scene here in Brisbane is relatively nascent, even compared to Sydney, Melbourne, and certainly the Silicon Valley. There isn't really a critical mass of talent and local funding that can help propel the industry. And I'm not so much talking about the engineering or the product talent, I'm talking about the marketing and the revenue optimization talent. So I think that, at a meta level, I would really encourage anyone participating in this industry to look for ways to give back and help drive that talent acquisition, the knowledge acquisition, the skills acquisition, because all it takes is a couple of really big success stories out of Brisbane and it changes the whole landscape for us. The other thing, and this is just more so based on my past experience than so much something that's specific to Brisbane, but I would urge at all costs, prioritize value over profit. I have witnessed far too many businesses with amazing products or amazing brands, just collapse on themselves because they've overly focused on profit. And that's really what I stepped into at Dictionary. All of those things I talked about that we had to change, no engineering talent, products, technical applications that were dysfunctional, outsourced revenue capabilities. That was because they had been so short-term profit focused. And eventually it catches up with you. And most of the time it's almost impossible to then recreate everything. So when I talk about focus on value, really what you need for value is sustainability. You need to build everything knowing that it will last, that it will have longevity. and that will make your life easier 5 years from now.
Thank you so much, Liz. Really insightful thoughts. I'm really glad we got a chance to have this conversation. The reason we wanted to produce this is because we value staff culture and people above all else at 720. We think it is so important. So if you do want to ask us more questions about how you might be ready to scale up or get great talented people on board, then feel free to ask us. We'll tag Liz below if you have any other questions to ask her and pick her brain about coming from Silicon Valley to Brisbane, and you've got some exciting new ventures on the horizon as well.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff, so anytime, Mike. Thank you.
Much.